A horror story. Skin deep. The perfect product. Emma Chen scrutinized her reflection in the bathroom mirror, her fingertips tracing the fine lines that had begun to appear at the corners of her eyes. At 38, she wasn't old by any standard, but the beauty industry had been telling her since her 20s that she was fighting a losing battle against time. The harsh, fluorescent lighting in her apartment bathroom did her no favors, highlighting every imperfection on her otherwise smooth olive skin. Her phone buzzed on the counter with a notification. Another targeted ad, this one featuring a radiant woman who had to be at least Emma's age, but whose skin gleamed with an almost otherworldly perfection. Emma normally scrolled past these ads without a second thought, but this one caught her attention. The product wasn't from one of the major beauty conglomerates she recognized. It was from a company called Dermis Novum, which claimed to be a revolutionary biotech skincare startup. The ad promised results unlike anything on the market. Reveal the perfect skin that lies just beneath the surface with Luminance, the world's first biomimetic skincare system that doesn't just treat your skin, but becomes one with it. Emma snorted at the hyperbole, but found herself clicking through anyway. The website was sleek and minimal, with testimonials from users who showed impressive before and after photos. Unlike most skincare ads she'd seen, these didn't appear heavily filtered or photoshopped. The changes were subtle, but striking. A natural-looking clarity and smoothness to the skin that seemed to glow from within, rather than shine artificially on the surface. What really caught her attention was the science section. Emma wasn't easily impressed by pseudoscientific babble. As a biochemist working in pharmaceutical research, she had a finely tuned bullshit detector when it came to miracle products. But Dermis Novum's explanation of their technology seemed grounded in legitimate research. They described a proprietary compound derived from deep-sea organisms that could integrate with human skin cells to enhance their regenerative properties. Unlike traditional exfoliants that damage your skin to trigger repair, the site explained, Luminance works synergistically with your body's natural processes, encouraging old cells to release and new ones to flourish without trauma. Emma scrolled down to the price and winced. At $280 for a starter kit, it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't outrageous compared to high-end skincare lines. There was a 30-day money-back guarantee, and the copy emphasized that a little product went a long way. She hesitated, her finger hovering over the Add to Cart button. Did she really need this? Was she just falling prey to the same insecurities the beauty industry had been exploiting for decades? Her phone buzzed again with a text from her friend Zoe. Drinks tomorrow? Trying that new place on Westheimer. Zoe, 2 years younger than Emma, had recently started dating again after her divorce. Their nights out had become increasingly focused on meeting potential partners, and Emma couldn't help but notice how men's eyes lingered on Zoe's smooth, youthful features before sliding away from Emma's. She told herself it didn't matter. She was focused on her career, not dating. But the sting of invisibility remained. Before she could overthink it, Emma clicked Add to Cart and completed her purchase. The site promised delivery within 3 business days. It's just skincare, she muttered to herself as she set her phone down. Worst case scenario, I return it. She had no idea how wrong she would be. Chapter 2. First Applications. 3 days later, a sleek black box arrived at Emma's door. The packaging was minimalist and elegant, with the company's logo, a stylized series of overlapping skin cells, embossed in silver on the top. Inside, nestled in, molded black foam, were 3 products: a cleanser, a serum, and a moisturizer, each in identical matte black containers with silver lettering. The accompanying booklet was more extensive than she expected, with detailed instructions and warnings. Luminance products work differently than traditional skincare, it read. For optimal results and comfort, please follow all instructions carefully. The regimen seemed straightforward enough. Cleanse, apply 3 drops of the serum to damp skin, wait 5 minutes, then apply the moisturizer. The warning section advised temporary tingling was normal, but to discontinue use if excessive discomfort, redness, or thinning of the skin occurs. Thinning of the skin? Emma paused at that. It seemed an odd side effect to list for a skincare product. She flipped back to the ingredients list, scanning for anything that might cause such a reaction. The list contained standard humectants and emollients, along with a proprietary complex called Dermintegra, which she assumed was their breakthrough ingredient. Without knowing its composition, she couldn't evaluate its safety, but the fact that it had passed regulatory approval was somewhat reassuring. That evening, after returning from her lab, Emma decided to try the products. The cleanser felt luxurious, with a faint, clean scent that wasn't overpowering. As instructed, she patted her face damp, then dispensed 3 drops of the serum onto her fingertips. The liquid was surprisingly warm to the touch and had an unusual iridescent quality, seeming to shift from clear to opalescent as it caught the light. As soon as she applied it to her face, she felt the promised tingling, a sensation more intense than she anticipated. It wasn't painful exactly, but it reminded her of the pins and needles feeling when circulation returns to a numb limb. She checked her watch, counting down the 5 minutes as the sensation gradually subsided. The moisturizer was similarly warm and had the same subtle iridescence. As she massaged it into her skin, Emma could have sworn she felt it moving beneath her fingertips, almost as if it were being absorbed more actively than a normal product. When she examined her reflection afterward, she was surprised to see her skin already looked different. There was a subtle luminosity that hadn't been there before, and the fine lines around her eyes seemed less pronounced. It couldn't be real results so quickly, she told herself. It must be a temporary cosmetic effect, like the instant blurring some primers created. Still, she couldn't help feeling a flicker of excitement. If this was just the immediate effect, what would her skin look like after a few weeks of use? That night, Emma slept fitfully. Her dreams were strange and vivid, images of her body dissolving and reforming, of her skin becoming transparent like jellyfish tentacles. She woke several times, her face feeling unnaturally warm, but when she touched her cheeks, they felt normal to the touch. In the morning, she hurried to the bathroom mirror, eager to see if the product's effects had lasted overnight. Her reflection stopped her short. Her skin looked perfect. There was no other word for it. The fine lines were gone, not just minimized, but completely absent. The slight unevenness in her tone had vanished, replaced by a uniform clarity that looked completely natural. Even the faint acne scar on her chin, a remnant from her teenage years that had resisted all previous treatments, had disappeared. "Holy shit," she whispered, leaning closer to the mirror. She ran her fingertips over her cheek, expecting to feel makeup or some kind of film, but her skin just felt like skin, perhaps slightly smoother than before, but not artificially so. Emma's scientific skepticism battled with the evidence before her eyes. No skincare product could produce results like this overnight. It wasn't biologically possible for skin cells to regenerate that quickly without some kind of medical intervention. She picked up the serum bottle, studying it with newfound curiosity and a twinge of unease. What exactly was in this Dermintegra complex? As a biochemist, she knew there were compounds that could accelerate cellular turnover, but nothing this dramatic without side effects. She decided to continue using the products but resolved to do some research into dermis novum when she got to work. If they had truly developed something this revolutionary, there should be scientific papers or at least industry buzz about their breakthrough. Later that day, as Emma swiped her keycard and entered the research building at Helios Pharmaceuticals, her colleague Marcus did a double-take. "New foundation?" he asked, studying her face with professional curiosity. Marcus worked in the dermatological division of the company, developing treatments for skin conditions. "No, why?" Emma replied, though she knew perfectly well what had prompted his question. "Your skin looks different. Good different. Like, freakishly good different." He leaned closer, squinting slightly behind his glasses. "What did you do?" Emma hesitated, suddenly reluctant to share her discovery. "Just trying a new skincare line," she said vaguely. "Nothing special." Marcus looked skeptical, but didn't press the issue as they headed to their respective labs. Once at her workstation, Emma opened a browser window and searched for information on dermis novum. To her surprise, there wasn't much available. The company appeared to have been founded just 3 years ago by a Dr. Eleanor Reed, formerly of the Marine Biological Institute. There were no scientific publications under the company's name, which was unusual for a biotech firm with proprietary technology. Their social media presence was minimal and seemed to have sprung up only within the past 6 months. Emma found this lack of digital footprint strange in today's interconnected world. Even the most secretive biotech startups usually had some trace of their research or founding story online. It was almost as if Dermis Novum had materialized out of nowhere. She dug deeper, searching for information on Dr. Reed. Here, at least, she found some results, several papers, on marine biology and biochemistry from about 5 years ago, focusing on deep-sea organisms with unique cellular properties. The last published paper mentioned research into potential medical applications, but gave no specifics. After that, Dr. Reed seemed to disappear from academic circles entirely. There was a brief announcement of her departure from the institute to pursue private research opportunities, and then nothing until the founding of Dermis Novum. Emma leaned back in her chair, chewing her lip thoughtfully. There was nothing inherently suspicious about a researcher leaving academia for the private sector. Many did so for the promise of better funding and fewer publishing pressures. Still, the abruptness of Dr. Reed's transition and the subsequent silence around her work niggled at Emma's scientific curiosity. She made a mental note to continue her investigation later. For now, she had her own research to focus on, but throughout the day, she caught glimpses of her reflection in the lab's glass cabinets and computer screens, each time feeling a mixture of satisfaction and unease at her transformed appearance. That evening, Emma repeated the skincare routine, this time paying closer attention to how the products felt and behaved. The tingling sensation was more pronounced than before, almost approaching discomfort, but not quite crossing the threshold. As she waited for the serum to absorb, she could have sworn she felt a subtle movement beneath her skin, like the faintest ripple across a pond's surface. She shook her head at her imagination. The product was affecting her perception as well as her appearance, making her hypersensitive to normal bodily sensations. After applying the moisturizer, she studied her reflection again. Was it her imagination? Or did her skin look even better than this morning? There was a translucent quality to it now, an almost poreless perfection that made her features appear subtly enhanced, like a real-life filter. Emma took a selfie and sent it to Zoe with the message, "Still on for drinks tomorrow?" Zoe's response came almost immediately. "Damn girl, what filter is that? You look amazing. See you at 8. Emma smiled at her phone, a flush of pleasure warming her cheeks. She had used no filter, but she wasn't about to correct Zoe's assumption. Let her friend be surprised tomorrow when she saw the results in person. That night the dreams returned, more vivid than before. Emma dreamt she was swimming in a deep ocean trench, her body transforming as she descended. Her skin became transparent, revealing pulsing organs and a network of veins that glowed with bioluminescent light. She didn't need to breathe. Her tissue simply absorbed oxygen directly from the water. The sensation was not frightening but liberating, as if she had transcended the limitations of her human form. She woke with a gasp, her heart racing, her skin slick with sweat. The digital clock on her nightstand read 3:27 a.m. As she sat up, she felt an odd sensation across her abdomen, a shifting, rippling feeling just beneath her skin. Emma yanked up her pajama top and stared down at her stomach in the dim light filtering through her blinds. For a moment, she thought she saw something move, a subtle undulation that didn't correspond to her breathing or heartbeat. She pressed her fingers against her abdomen, but the sensation stopped. Her skin felt strangely thin under her fingertips, almost like wet tissue paper, though it didn't tear or break. Unsettled, Emma got up and went to the bathroom, flicking on the harsh overhead light. In the mirror, her face looked normal, better than normal, with the same flawless appearance she had marveled at earlier. But something about her eyes seemed different. The whites appeared slightly clearer, almost luminous, and her irises seemed to have more depth, like pools rather than flat surfaces. "You're sleep-deprived and suggestible," she told her reflection firmly. "Go back to bed." But as she turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of movement in the mirror that didn't match her own. A ripple across her cheek, like something shifting beneath the surface. She whirled back, staring at her reflection, but her face was still again. Emma raised a trembling hand to her face, pressing gently. Her skin felt thin and unusually warm. As she applied pressure, she could have sworn her fingertips sank slightly deeper than it should have, as if the tissue beneath had less substance than normal. A cold knot of fear formed in her stomach. This wasn't normal. Whatever was happening to her skin went beyond the cosmetic improvements she had expected. She thought about the warning in the product booklet. Discontinue use if excessive discomfort, redness, or thinning of the skin occurs. Thinning of the skin. The phrase echoed in her mind, taking on a more sinister meaning than she had initially attributed to it. Emma decided then and there to stop using the products. In the morning, she would contact Dermis Novum's customer service and request that refund. Maybe even report her experiences to the FDA's adverse event reporting system. Somewhat reassured by having a plan, she returned to bed, though sleep eluded her for the remainder of the night. She kept feeling phantom movements beneath her skin, triggering the urge to scratch or press at the, sensations. By the time her alarm went off at 7 a.m., she was exhausted and on edge. The first thing she did was check her face in the bathroom mirror again. In the clear morning light, her skin still looked perfect. Too perfect. There was something almost artificial about its flawlessness now, like a high-end silicone mask rather than living tissue. When she smiled, the skin moved naturally enough, but the expression didn't quite reach her eyes, which continued to look strangely luminous and deep. Emma skipped her morning skincare routine, opting instead for a quick shower. As the water cascaded over her body, she examined her skin with growing unease. Every inch of her appeared smoother, more uniform in tone, with a subtle translucent quality that wasn't appropriate for human skin. Her birthmarks and freckles had faded, and even the small scar on her knee from a childhood bicycle accident was nearly invisible. What kind of topical product could affect skin that hadn't even been treated with it? After her shower, she dressed quickly in a high-necked blouse and slacks, wanting to cover as much skin as possible. At work, she would research the ingredients more thoroughly. There had to be a scientific explanation for what was happening to her. At her lab, Emma logged into the company's scientific database, which provided access to journals and research papers well beyond what was available to the general public. She searched first for Dr. Eleanor Reed, filtering for publications after her last academic paper. This time, she found something, a brief case report in a lesser-known marine biochemistry journal describing an unusual condition among research divers at the Marine Biological Institute. The divers had been collecting specimens from deep-sea vents when they reported strange changes to their skin after prolonged exposure to a newly discovered species of sea slug. The report described symptoms disturbingly similar to what Emma was experiencing: unusually smooth, thin skin with a translucent quality, followed by reports of movement beneath the surface. The paper was co-authored by Dr. Reed, but appeared to have been published posthumously by her colleagues, as it mentioned her departure from the institute in the acknowledgments. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. The report concluded that the condition had resolved itself after several weeks with no permanent damage to the affected divers, but the similarity to her current situation was too striking to ignore. She was about to search for more information when Marcus appeared at her workstation. "I need your input on something," he said, then paused, staring at her face. "Okay, seriously, what are you using on your skin? I've been working in dermatological research for 15 years, and I've never seen results like this from an over-the-counter product." Emma hesitated, then decided to confide in him. Marcus was not just a colleague, but a friend, and his expertise in skin biology might help her understand what was happening. "It's a new line called Luminance, from a company called Dermis Novum," she admitted. "But I'm concerned about some side effects." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What kind of side effects?" She lowered her voice, suddenly aware of how paranoid she might sound. "My skin feels thin, and sometimes I think I can feel something moving underneath it." Instead of the skeptical response she expected, Marcus's expression turned serious. "Can I see?" Emma glanced around the lab. They were alone for the moment, most of their colleagues at lunch or in meetings. She pushed up her sleeve, exposing her forearm. Marcus leaned closer, studying her skin with professional intensity. He reached out and gently pressed his finger against her arm. Emma watched in horror as his fingertip created a deeper indentation than should have been possible, the skin dimpling inward like soft clay. "Jesus," Marcus muttered. He picked up a small magnifying glass from his workbench and examined her skin more closely. "Emma, this isn't normal epidermal thinning like you'd see with steroid overuse. Your dermal layer looks altered. The cellular structure appears less dense than it should be." He looked up at her, concern evident in his eyes. "How long have you been using this product?" "Just 2 days," Emma replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus shook his head in disbelief. No cosmetic product should cause changes this dramatic in 2 days. "Have you contacted the company?" "Not yet. I was going to do that today." He nodded. "Good. Tell them exactly what's happening and demand information about the active ingredients. In the meantime, I'd like to take a small skin sample if you're comfortable with that. I can run some basic histology tests to see what's going on at the cellular level." Emma agreed readily. Part of her was terrified to know what was happening to her skin, but the scientist in her needed answers. Marcus gathered a sterile punch biopsy tool from his lab equipment. The procedure was quick and relatively painless. A small circular section of skin, about the size of a pencil eraser, removed from Emma's forearm. Marcus applied a small bandage to the site afterward. "I'll process this right away," he promised. "It'll take a few hours to fix, section, and stain the sample. Can you come back after your meeting with the Merck team?" Emma had forgotten all about the meeting scheduled for that afternoon. "Yes, I'll come find you as soon as it's done." As she gathered her materials for the meeting, Emma couldn't stop thinking about what Marcus had observed. Altered dermal structure, less dense than normal. What exactly was this product doing to her skin? The meeting dragged interminably. Emma struggled to focus on the discussion of clinical trial protocols, her mind constantly returning to the unsettling changes happening to her body. Twice, she caught herself absently rubbing at her arm, feeling the strange thinness of her skin beneath her blouse. When the meeting finally ended, she hurried back to Marcus's lab, only to find it empty. On his workbench was a note in his hasty scrawl. "Called to urgent department meeting. Preliminary results concerning. We'll find you ASAP." Emma felt her heart rate quicken. Preliminary results concerning. What had he found? Unable to wait patiently, she decided to contact Dermis Novum directly. She returned to her workstation and found the customer service number from their website. After several rings, a smooth, professional voice answered. "Dermis Novum Customer Care. How may I assist you today?" Emma took a deep breath. "My name is Emma Chen. I recently purchased your Luminance skincare system, and I'm experiencing unusual side effects. My skin has become extremely thin, and I sometimes feel movement beneath the surface." There was a brief pause before the representative responded. "I understand your concern, Ms. Chen. Those symptoms can occur in a small percentage of users during the initial integration phase. How long have you been using the products?" The clinical tone and immediate recognition of her symptoms sent a fresh wave of alarm through Emma. "Integration phase? What do you mean by that?" "And I've been using it for 2 days. The Derm Integra complex works by temporarily altering dermal structure to allow for optimal cellular regeneration," the representative explained smoothly. "The sensation of movement is simply your body's accelerated healing processes at work. These effects should stabilize within 72 to 96 hours of initial application." "That doesn't sound like any skincare product I've ever heard of," Emma said, her scientific skepticism flaring. "What exactly is in this Derm Integra complex?" Another pause, slightly longer this time. "I'm afraid the exact formulation is proprietary. However, I can assure you that all ingredients have passed rigorous safety testing and are FDA compliant for cosmetic use." "I'm a biochemist," Emma said, letting a hint of authority enter her voice. I understand the need for protecting intellectual property, but I'm experiencing concerning changes to my skin. I need to know what active compounds I'm being exposed to. I understand, Ms. Chen. Given your scientific background and concerns, I'll have one of our research team contact you directly to discuss the formulation in more technical detail. May I have the best number to reach you? Emma provided her cell phone number, then added, In the meantime, I'd like to return the products and request a refund under your guarantee. Of course, the representative replied. However, I should inform you that discontinuing use during the integration phase can lead to temporary discomfort as your skin readjusts. Our research team can provide guidance on the best tapering protocol for your situation. Tapering protocol, Emma thought. This sounds more like coming off a medication than stopping a cosmetic product. I'll take my chances, she said firmly. Please process the return and refund. After completing the return process, Emma hung up, feeling more unsettled than before. The representative's calm acknowledgement of her symptoms suggested they weren't unexpected or unusual, which meant the company knew their product caused these effects and considered them normal. She was about to search for more information on dermis novum when a notification popped up on her computer, a calendar reminder for her drinks with Zoe that evening. Emma considered canceling, but decided against it. Maybe a few hours of normalcy would help calm her nerves. As she was gathering her things to leave for the day, her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Sample processing took longer than expected. Can we meet first thing tomorrow? Don't use that product again. Emma texted back her agreement, her unease growing. Marcus wasn't prone to overreaction. If he was telling her not to use the product again, he must have found something truly concerning. That evening, as Emma got ready to meet Zoe, she studied her reflection with a mixture of admiration and fear. Despite her concerns, she couldn't deny that she looked stunning. Her skin had a luminous quality that made her appear younger, healthier, almost supernaturally beautiful. No makeup could have achieved this effect. It was as if her skin itself had been transformed into something better than human. The bar Zoe had chosen was dim and trendy, with exposed brick walls and Edison bulbs casting a warm, flattering glow over the patrons. Emma arrived first and secured a small table near the back. When Zoe walked in, a few minutes later, her eyes widened as she spotted Emma. "Holy shit!" she exclaimed, sliding into the seat opposite Emma. "I thought you were using a filter in that selfie, but you actually look like that now? What kind of witchcraft is this?" Emma attempted a smile, though it felt strained. "Just a new skincare line." Zoe leaned closer, examining Emma's face with frank admiration and a hint of envy. "Well, it's working. You look airbrushed in real life. Is it expensive? I need to get on this regimen immediately." "Actually, I'm returning it," Emma said. "I'm having some reactions." "What kind of reactions could possibly be worth giving up skin like that?" Zoe asked incredulously. Before Emma could formulate a response that wouldn't sound paranoid, a waiter approached to take their drink orders. As he turned to Emma, she noticed his gaze lingering on her face with unusual intensity. "Your skin," he said abruptly. "It's perfect." The comment, though delivered as a compliment, made Emma intensely uncomfortable. "Thank you," she murmured, quickly ordering a gin and tonic. Throughout the evening, she noticed similar reactions from others in the bar. Lingering glances, double takes, even a few people openly staring. Men who would normally have overlooked her in favor of Zoe, or younger women, now cast appreciative looks in her direction. Zoe, noticing the attention, raised her glass in a toast. "To whatever miracle product you're foolishly returning," she said with a grin. "It's definitely working." Emma forced a smile and clinked glasses, but the attention was making her increasingly uneasy. It wasn't just vanity that made her aware of the stares. There was something almost primal in the way people were looking at her, as if they sensed something different about her on an instinctual level. After her second drink, Emma excused herself to use the restroom. In the harsh fluorescent lighting, her skin looked even more unnaturally perfect than it had in her apartment. But there was something else now. A subtle translucency that allowed her to see the faint blue tracery of veins beneath the surface, visible in places where they shouldn't be. As she washed her hands, she felt that now familiar rippling sensation beneath the skin of her forearm. This time, rather than ignoring it, she focused on the spot, watching intently. To her horror, she saw it, a distinct undulation beneath her skin, like something moving independently of her muscles. It wasn't her imagination, nor a trick of the light. Something was moving under her skin. Emma bit back a scream, gripping the edge of the sink as a wave of dizziness washed over her. This couldn't be happening. It wasn't scientifically possible for a topical product to cause this kind of effect. Unless it wasn't just a topical product. Unless the integration the customer service representative had mentioned was more literal than figurative. Emma thought of the research paper she had found about the divers exposed to the deep-sea organism. What if Dermis novum had found a way to harness that organism's properties? What if the Dermintegra complex contained biological material that was actively integrating with her own tissue? The thought made her stomach lurch. She splashed cold water on her face, trying to calm herself. She was a scientist, not some superstitious fool. There had to be a rational explanation for what was happening to her. When she returned to the table, Zoe gave her a concerned look. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm not feeling well," Emma said, which wasn't a lie. "I think I should head home." Zoe looked disappointed but nodded sympathetically. "Sure, do you want me to come with you? Make sure you get home okay?" "No, I'll be fine. It's just a headache." Emma gathered her purse, suddenly desperate to be alone. "Rain check?" "Of course. Text me when you get home." The cool night air helped clear Emma's head as she walked the few blocks to the subway station. She kept her arms wrapped tightly around herself, hyper-aware of every sensation beneath her skin. Twice she felt that sickening ripple across her abdomen, and once, a fluttering sensation along her spine that made her whole body shudder. On the train, she found herself surrounded by people yet utterly alone with her fear. A man seated across from her stared openly at her face, his expression a disconcerting mixture of attraction and unease, as if he sensed something not quite right about her appearance. By the time Emma reached her apartment, she was on the verge of panic. She locked the door behind her and immediately went to the bathroom, where she had left the luminance products. With shaking hands, she gathered the sleek black containers and shoved them into the box they had arrived in, intending to mail them back the following day. As she picked up the serum bottle, she noticed something strange. The remaining liquid inside seemed to be moving, swirling gently despite the bottle being held still. When she tilted it toward the light, the iridescent fluid appeared to respond, flowing toward the brightest part of the container as if drawn to the illumination. Emma nearly dropped the bottle in shock. No cosmetic product should behave that way. Whatever was in this serum, it wasn't just chemicals. It was something active, possibly even alive. She quickly sealed the box and placed it by her front door, wanting the products as far from her sleeping area as possible. Then she took a long, hot shower, scrubbing her skin almost raw in a futile attempt to remove whatever might be integrating with her tissues. The hot water only seemed to accelerate the strange sensations beneath her skin. By the time she stepped out of the shower, the movement had become more pronounced, rippling waves that traveled across her abdomen, down her thighs, along her arms. When she looked in the mirror, she could clearly see these undulations, like creatures swimming just beneath the surface of her skin. Emma bit her lip to keep from screaming. This was beyond her understanding, beyond anything she had encountered in her scientific career. Something was alive inside her, moving independently of her own bodily functions. She fumbled for her phone and called Marcus, not caring that it was nearly midnight. When his groggy voice answered, she could barely contain her panic. "Marcus, I need help. Something's moving under my skin. I can see it moving." There was a moment of silence, then Marcus's voice, suddenly alert. "Where are you?" "At home. I'm coming over. Text me your address. Don't do anything. Don't cut yourself. Don't take any medications. Just wait for me." The urgency in his voice confirmed Emma's worst fears. Whatever Marcus had seen in her skin sample, it was bad enough to warrant this middle-of-the-night intervention. As she waited for Marcus to arrive, Emma sat rigidly on the edge of her bed, afraid to lie down, afraid to relax into sleep where the thing inside her might gain more control. She kept one hand pressed against her abdomen, feeling the rhythmic rippling beneath her palm. It wasn't painful exactly, but the sensation was profoundly wrong, a movement that shouldn't exist within a human body. Each undulation sent a wave of nausea through her, a primal rejection of the alien presence beneath her skin. When her doorbell finally rang, Emma nearly sobbed with relief. She hurried to let Marcus in, not caring that she was dressed only in a bathrobe, her hair still damp from the shower. Marcus entered carrying a small medical bag, his expression grim. He took one look at Emma's face and said quietly, "Show me." Emma loosened her robe just enough to expose her abdomen. In the harsh overhead light of her living room, the movement was clearly visible, ripples traveling across her skin like waves on water. Marcus's scientific composure faltered for a moment, his eyes widening in shock. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. He set down his bag and withdrew a small digital microscope that connected to his phone. "May I?" Emma nodded, beyond modesty or propriety now. She just wanted answers and help. Marcus placed the microscope against her skin, his eyes fixed on the screen of his phone as he captured magnified images. His expression grew increasingly troubled as he moved the device across her abdomen, arms, and back. "What did you find in my skin sample?" Emma asked, unable to bear the suspense any longer. Marcus lowered the microscope, his face pale. "Your dermal layer has been colonized by an unknown biological structure. It's not bacterial or fungal. It appears to be some kind of specialized tissue that is integrated with your own cells." Integrated? What does that mean? Though even as she asked, Emma knew. The customer service. Representative's words echoed in her mind. The initial integration phase. It means whatever was in that product isn't just sitting on top of your skin or even penetrating between cells like most cosmetic ingredients, Marcus explained, his voice clinical but strained. It's forming connections with your own tissue, creating a hybrid cellular structure I've never seen before. He showed her the phone screen, where the magnified image revealed her skin cells interspersed with something else. Translucent, fiber-like structures that formed a web throughout her dermal layer. These structures pulsed subtly, contracting and releasing in a pattern that explained the rippling sensation she had been feeling. "What is it?" Emma whispered, staring at the alien network living beneath her skin. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "The closest analog would be cnidarian tissue, jellyfish or anemone. But it's been modified somehow, engineered to integrate with human cellular structures." Emma thought of Dr. Reed's research into deep-sea organisms and their unique cellular properties. Had she found a way to adapt marine invertebrate tissue for human use? The concept wasn't entirely implausible. Medical. Research had long looked to other species for innovations in treatment, but this went far beyond traditional biomimicry. This was actual integration of non-human tissue with her own. "Is it dangerous?" she asked, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. Marcus hesitated, which was answer enough. "I don't know the long-term effects, but any foreign biological material integrating with human tissue carries risks, rejection, immune response, unpredictable interactions with other bodily systems." He packed away the microscope and opened his medical bag again, retrieving a vial and syringe. "This is a broad-spectrum immunosuppressant. It might slow the integration process while we figure out how to reverse it. Are you willing to try it?" Emma nodded without hesitation. At this point, she would try anything to stop whatever was happening to her body. As Marcus prepared the injection, Emma's phone rang. She glanced at the screen. An unknown number. Normally, she would have ignored it at this hour, but something made her answer. "Emma Chen?" a woman's voice asked. "This is Dr. Eleanor Reed from Dermis Novum. I understand you've been experiencing some concerns with our Luminance product line." Chapter 4. The Integration. Emma's hand tightened around the phone. "Dr. Reed." "Yes, I've been experiencing what your customer service representative called the integration phase. though they failed to mention this phase involves non-human tissue colonizing my skin. There was a pause, then Dr. Reed's voice, cool and professional. I see you've done some research, or perhaps medical examination. You are a biochemist after all. The fact that Reed knew her profession sent a chill down Emma's spine. She hadn't mentioned that to the customer service representative. How do you know what I do for a living? Emma demanded. We perform thorough background checks on all early adopters of our premium product lines, Reed replied smoothly. It helps us tailor our customer service approach. You're not just any customer, Ms. Chen. Your scientific background makes you particularly valuable to us. Marcus was watching Emma's face with concern, the syringe ready in his hand. She put the phone on speaker so he could hear. Valuable how? Emma asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. Your professional understanding of biochemical processes means you're uniquely positioned to appreciate what luminance truly offers, Reed explained. This isn't a mere cosmetic product, Ms. Chen. It's the first step in human evolutionary advancement. Emma exchanged a disbelieving look with Marcus. You're selling an evolutionary advancement as an anti-aging cream, without informing users of what it actually does? Most consumers don't want technical details. They want results, Reed said, her voice taking on a hint of passion. And what results they are. Perfect skin is just the beginning. The Dermintegra complex is designed to gradually enhance human tissue with properties borrowed from the most resilient organisms on Earth. The deep-sea invertebrates from your research, Emma said. You've been thorough. Reed sounded impressed. Yes, specifically a species of hydrozoan found near hydrothermal vents. These creatures possess remarkable adaptive abilities, tissue that can withstand extreme sea pressure, temperature, and toxicity, tissue that can repair itself with unprecedented efficiency. When properly integrated with human cells, these properties transfer to the host. Host? Emma repeated, the word sending a fresh wave of nausea through her. That makes it sound parasitic. A poor choice of words, Reed conceded. Symbiotic would be more accurate. The Dermintegra complex offers benefits to the human recipient: cellular regeneration, enhanced durability, potentially extended lifespan, while gaining a more complex biological system to inhabit. Marcus leaned closer to the phone. This is Dr. Marcus Wei, dermatological researcher at Helios Pharmaceuticals. What you're describing is a completely unapproved biological agent. Have you conducted any controlled clinical trials? Received any regulatory approval for this application? There was a brief silence before Reed responded, her tone cooler. Dr. Wei, I wasn't aware Ms. Chen had consulted a colleague. To answer your question, luminance is classified as a cosmetic, not a drug or biological agent, which places it under different regulatory frameworks. That's a deliberate misclassification, Marcus countered. Any product containing live biological material that integrates with human tissue should be regulated as a biologic at minimum, possibly as a xenotransplant. The legal and regulatory details are complex, Reed said dismissively. But that's not why I called. Ms. Chen, I understand you're experiencing the integration phase more intensely than most users. I believe I can help manage your symptoms and ensure a smooth transition. Transition to what? Emma demanded. To the next phase of the process, Reed said. The integration typically stabilizes after 72 to 96 hours. Once complete, the movement sensations will cease, and you'll begin to experience the full benefits of the system. Emma pressed a hand to her abdomen, feeling the alien rippling beneath her skin. And if I want to reverse this process, to remove this thing from my body? Another pause, longer this time. Reversal is complex, Reed finally said. Once integration reaches a certain point, the Dermintegra complex becomes inextricably linked with your own tissue. Attempting to remove it could cause significant damage. So I'm stuck with it? Emma felt a surge of panic rising in her chest. I urge you not to see it that way. Reed's voice took on an almost evangelical quality. You're among the first to experience true human enhancement. The perfect skin you've already achieved is just the surface manifestation of profound cellular improvements happening throughout your body. Within weeks, You'll notice increased energy, faster healing, improved cognitive function. Did you test this on humans before bringing it to market? Marcus interrupted, his expression grim. Extensively, Reed assured him. I was the first subject myself, over 3 years ago. Since then, we've had a closed group of participants monitoring long-term effects. All positive, I assure you. Emma's mind raced. 3 years would hardly be sufficient to assess the true long-term effects of such a profound biological change, and a small test group wouldn't reveal less common adverse reactions. I want it removed, Emma said firmly. Whatever it takes. Reed sighed audibly. I strongly advise against that approach, Ms. Chen. But if you insist, we should meet in person to discuss options. Attempting any intervention without proper guidance could be dangerous. Where are you located? Emma hesitated, suddenly wary of providing her location to this woman and her company. I'd prefer to meet in a public place. Of course, Reed agreed readily. There's a cafe called Meridian near your workplace. Would tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. suit you? The fact that Reed knew about a cafe near her workplace only heightened Emma's unease, but she agreed to the meeting. After hanging up, she turned to Marcus, who was still holding the prepared syringe. What do you think? She asked. Marcus shook his head, his expression troubled. I think what they're doing is reckless and possibly illegal. But she might be right about one thing. Attempting to suppress or remove this integration without understanding it could be dangerous. He set the syringe down. I think we should hold off on this immunosuppressant until after you meet with Reed. She might have information about the biological mechanism that could help us formulate a safer approach to removal. Emma nodded reluctantly. The movement beneath her skin had become a constant presence now, a rhythmic rippling that traveled in waves across her body. It wasn't painful, but the psychological horror of having something alien moving within her was almost unbearable. Will you stay? She asked quietly. I don't think I can be alone with this tonight. Marcus nodded without hesitation. Of course, and I'm coming with you to that meeting tomorrow. Emma felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you. They settled in her living room, Marcus taking the couch, while Emma curled up in an armchair, wrapped in a blanket despite the warmth of the apartment. Neither of them slept much. Every few minutes Emma would feel a particularly strong wave of movement and tense up, sometimes gasping aloud when the sensation was especially pronounced. Around 3 a.m., she went to the bathroom and examined herself in the mirror again. The changes to her skin had progressed. It now had a distinctly opalescent quality, catching and refracting light in ways human skin shouldn't. When she pressed her fingers against her cheek, the skin dimpled deeply, then slowly returned to its shape, like memory foam rather than living tissue. Most disturbing of all, she could now see the network of foreign tissue beneath her skin when she held her arm up to the light, a delicate web-like structure that pulsed with its own rhythm, independent of her heartbeat or breathing. By morning, Emma was exhausted and on edge. The continuous movement beneath her skin had made rest impossible, and the psychological strain of knowing something alien was living inside her was taking its toll. Marcus looked little better. He had spent most of the night researching on his laptop trying to find any scientific literature that might shed light on what was happening to Emma. His findings had been minimal, a few obscure papers on marine invertebrate biology, some experimental work on biomimetic materials, but nothing that directly addressed the kind of cellular integration Emma was experiencing. They arrived at Meridian Cafe 20 minutes early, selecting a table with a good view of the entrance and all exits. Emma wore long sleeves and high-necked clothing despite the warm weather, desperate to hide the increasingly visible changes to her skin. At precisely 9 a.m., a woman entered the cafe and approached their table without hesitation. Dr. Eleanor Reed was tall and slender, with silver-gray hair pulled back in an elegant twist. She appeared to be in her 60s, but her skin had the same perfect, luminous quality that Emma's had taken on, perhaps even more pronounced, with an almost translucent effect that made her features appear ethereal rather than aged. Ms. Chen, Dr. Wei, she greeted them, sitting down with fluid grace. Thank you for meeting with me. Up close, Emma could see something strange about Reed's eyes. The irises seemed unusually deep, with a shifting quality reminiscent of the iridescent serum. There was something fundamentally inhuman about her gaze, as if something else were looking out through those eyes. "You said you could help," Emma said without preamble, her voice low and tense. "I want this thing out of me." Reed studied her for a moment, then sighed. "I understand your fear, Ms. Chen. The integration phase can be disconcerting for those unprepared for it, but I urge you to reconsider your desire for removal." She glanced around the cafe, then lowered her voice. "What you're experiencing is the next step in human evolution, a synthesis of resilient marine biology with human cellular structure. The discomfort is temporary, I assure you. Once integration is complete, the movement will cease as the derm integra complex synchronizes fully with your own neural pathways." "And then what?" Marcus asked, his scientific skepticism evident. "What happens after full integration?" Reed smiled, a serene expression that didn't quite reach her strange eyes. "Transformation, enhanced resilience, potential longevity beyond current human limitations. I myself have not experienced illness or injury in the 3 years since my integration. My cellular structure now repairs itself at a rate previously thought impossible in humans." To demonstrate, she took a pen from her purse, and before either of them could react, made a small cut on the back of her hand. Emma gasped as the skin parted, revealing not blood but a clear, slightly opalescent fluid. More shocking still was how quickly the wound closed, the edges pulling together and sealing within seconds, leaving no trace of the injury. "That's—" Marcus trailed off, scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his concern. "Remarkable," Reed suggested. "It's one of many advantages. The dermintegra complex optimizes human cellular function while incorporating beneficial properties from organisms that have survived in Earth's most extreme environments for millions of years." Emma shook her head, still unconvinced. "You're talking about fundamentally altering human biology based on limited testing and without informed consent. What about long-term consequences? Reproductive effects? Potential for malignant transformation?" "All considered in our research," Reed assured her. "The integration appears stable indefinitely, with no evidence of cancerous mutations. As for reproduction—" She hesitated briefly. "That remains an area of ongoing study. The few integrated individuals who have attempted conception have not yet been successful, but our research suggests compatibility may be possible with certain adaptations." Marcus leaned forward. "So you're sterilizing people without their knowledge? That alone should require explicit informed consent and regulatory oversight." Reed's expression hardened slightly. "We're offering transcendence beyond the limitations of conventional human biology. The trade-offs are minimal compared to the benefits." "That should be for each person to decide," Emma countered. "You're making that choice for them by concealing what your product really does." Reed studied Emma with those unsettling eyes. "You're right, of course. Ethically speaking, full disclosure would be ideal. But the reality is that humanity is facing extinction through its own short-sightedness, climate catastrophe, antibiotic resistance, emerging pathogens. The derm integra complex offers resilience against all these threats, but presenting it as a medical treatment would entail decades of regulatory hurdles, while humanity edges closer to disaster." She leaned closer, her voice intense. "So we found another path. Beauty is a universal desire, and people willingly apply countless untested chemicals to their skin in pursuit of it. We simply leverage that desire to deliver something far more valuable: evolutionary advancement." Emma felt a wave of movement beneath her skin, stronger than before, as if the thing inside her were responding to Reed's presence or words. She pressed a hand against her abdomen, trying to suppress the visible undulation. Reed noticed the gesture, and her expression softened. "The movement is distressing, I know. I experienced it myself. It will pass as integration completes." She reached into her purse and withdrew a small vial of clear liquid. "This will help accelerate the process and reduce the sensation. 2 drops under the tongue, twice daily, until the movement stops. Emma made no move to take the vial. You still haven't answered my original question. Can this integration be reversed? Reed's hesitation was more pronounced this time. In the early stages, yes, though not without some tissue damage. A specialized enzyme complex can break down the integration structures before they form permanent bonds with your cells, but it becomes increasingly difficult after the first 96 hours. After full integration, generally around the 1-week mark, reversal becomes effectively impossible without catastrophic damage to your own tissues. And I'm at what stage now? Emma asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. Based on your description and the timing, you're approximately 48 hours into the process, Reed said. Reversal is still possible, but the window is closing, and I must strongly caution against it. The reversal process is painful and will leave your skin damaged for months afterward. Marcus interjected. Do you have this enzyme complex with you? Reed shook her head. No. It's unstable and must be prepared fresh. If Ms. Chen is determined to proceed with reversal, she would need to come to our laboratory facility. Where is this facility? Emma asked. About 2 hours from here, Reed replied vaguely. I can arrange transportation whenever you're ready. Emma exchanged a glance with Marcus, seeing her own suspicion reflected in his eyes. Going to an unknown location with this woman seemed extraordinarily risky. I need time to consider my options, Emma said carefully. Reed nodded, not seeming surprised. Understandable, but don't take too long. The integration progresses quickly. She placed the vial on the table. This will help with the discomfort in the meantime, whether you ultimately choose to continue or reverse the process. She stood to leave, then paused, looking down at Emma with an expression that mingled sympathy and conviction. Ms. Chen, I understand your fear. I truly do. But what you're experiencing isn't a cosmetic side effect. It's the beginning of something remarkable. I hope you'll come to see it that way. After Reed departed, Emma and Marcus remained at the table, the small vial sitting untouched between them. What do you think? Emma asked quietly. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, his expression troubled. I think she believes what she's saying. Whether that makes her a visionary or a dangerous zealot is hard to say. Do you think reversal is possible? Theoretically, yes. If this integration involves novel protein structures forming connections between your cells and this foreign tissue, an enzyme designed to cleave those specific connections could potentially work. He eyed the vial suspiciously, but I wouldn't take anything she gives you without analyzing it first. Emma nodded in agreement. We could take it to your lab? Yes. And while we're there, I want to run more tests on your tissue sample. There might be clues about the mechanism of integration that could help us develop our own reversal approach. They left the cafe, Emma carrying the vial carefully in her purse. As they walked toward the subway station, she became acutely aware of people's reactions to her. Despite her concealing clothing, her face still drew stares, some admiring, others unsettled, as if people sensed something not quite right about her appearance. On the train, a child sitting opposite Emma pointed at her face and asked loudly, "Mommy, why does that lady look weird?" The mother hushed the child with an embarrassed glance, but the comment cut through Emma's already fragile composure. Children, with their unfiltered perceptions, could sometimes see what adults had learned to overlook or rationalize. What did that child see in her that others might be subconsciously registering? How much more would her appearance change as the integration progressed? By the time they reached the Helios Pharmaceuticals building, Emma was fighting back tears of frustration and fear. The movement beneath her skin had intensified during the journey, as if agitated by her emotional state. In Marcus's lab, they set to work immediately. Marcus took a sample of the liquid from Reed's vial for analysis, while Emma underwent another skin biopsy to track the progression of the integration. The results were disturbing. The foreign tissue had spread significantly since the previous day, forming a more complex network throughout Emma's dermal layer. It now extended into the subcutaneous fat as well, with tendrils reaching toward deeper structures. It's growing faster than I expected, Marcus said grimly, studying the microscopy images. At this rate, you'll reach what Reed called full integration well before the 1-week mark she mentioned. What about the vial contents? Emma asked, trying to keep the desperation from her voice. Marcus shook his head. It's complex. Preliminary analysis shows a mixture of proteins and compounds I can't readily identify. Some appear similar to neurotransmitters, which might explain how it could affect the movement sensation. But without knowing more about the derm integra complex itself, I can't say whether this would help or accelerate the integration. Emma felt a wave of hopelessness wash over her. Time was running out, and they had no clear path to reversing what was happening to her body. What if we go to the hospital? She suggested. Explain the situation? Get more expert help? Marcus's expression was skeptical. And tell them what, exactly? That you used a skincare product containing an engineered marine organism that's now integrating with your tissue? Best case scenario, they'd think we're delusional. Worst case, they'd want to quarantine you as a potential biohazard. He was right, Emma realized with sinking despair. This situation was beyond conventional medical understanding or treatment protocols. What about Reed's offer? Marcus asked quietly. Going to their facility for the reversal enzyme? Emma hesitated. The thought of placing herself in Reed's hands was deeply unsettling, yet it might be her only option for reversing the integration before it became permanent. I don't trust her, she admitted. But what choice do I have? Before Marcus could respond, Emma's phone rang. The display showed the same unknown number from the previous night. Dr. Reed, Emma answered, putting the call on speaker. Ms. Chen, Reed's voice sounded different, tenser, more urgent. Have you made your decision regarding reversal? Not yet, Emma replied cautiously. Why? There was a brief pause before Reed continued. There's been a development you should be aware of. One of our early luminance users is experiencing an unexpected acceleration of the integration process. Her symptoms suggest a potential complication we hadn't previously observed. Emma felt her heart rate quicken. What kind of complication? The derm integra complex appears to be extending beyond the dermal layer more rapidly than usual, integrating with neural tissue and potentially other organs. Reed's clinical tone didn't fully mask the concern in her voice. We're monitoring the situation, but out of an abundance of caution, I recommend you come to our facility immediately for assessment, regardless of whether you choose reversal or continuation. Emma exchanged an alarmed look with Marcus. What are the symptoms of this acceleration? Increased movement sensations, heightened skin translucency, and... Reed hesitated. Episodes of involuntary muscle contraction, particularly in areas where the integration is most advanced. Emma felt a cold knot of fear form in her stomach. Just that morning, she had experienced several moments where her fingers had clenched or her leg muscles had spasmed without her conscious intention. I've had those muscle contractions, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Reed's tone became more urgent. Then I strongly advise you to come in immediately. My driver can pick you up within the hour. This acceleration needs to be addressed before the integration progresses further. Marcus placed a hand on Emma's arm in silent support. We'll both be coming, he told Reed, and we'll need the exact address of your facility before we agree to anything. Of course, Reed replied smoothly. I'll text the details to Ms. Chen's phone, but please don't delay. The integration process, once accelerated, can progress very quickly. After ending the call, Emma sat in stunned silence for several moments. The movement beneath her skin seemed to mock her, a constant reminder of the alien presence gradually taking over her body. Do you believe her? She finally asked Marcus, about this acceleration complication. He frowned thoughtfully. It's plausible. Any biological integration process could potentially extend beyond its intended boundaries. And if these structures are already reaching into your subcutaneous tissue, progression to muscle and eventually neural tissue isn't far-fetched. Could it be fatal? Emma forced herself to ask the question that had been lurking in her mind. Marcus didn't sugarcoat his response. If it integrated with cardiac tissue or critical areas of the brain? Potentially, yes. Emma's phone chimed with a text. an address in a rural area about 2 hours from the city, along with a message that a car would be waiting outside the Helios building in 45 minutes. "I don't see that we have much choice," she said resignedly. "But I don't want to go alone." "You won't," Marcus assured her. "I'm coming with you, and—" He hesitated, then moved to a cabinet in his lab, unlocking it with a key from his pocket. From inside, he withdrew a small black case. "We're taking precautions." He opened the case to reveal a syringe gun and several vials of clear liquid. "Broad-spectrum biocide," he explained. "It's designed to break down organic matter at the molecular level. It would be extremely painful and damaging to your tissue, but as a last resort, it could potentially disrupt the integration process." Emma nodded, somewhat reassured by this backup plan, however desperate it might be. As they prepared to leave, Emma caught sight of her reflection in one of the lab's glass cabinets. Her face looked less and less like her own, the skin too perfect, too luminous with that disturbing translucency that revealed hints of the structure beneath. Even her expression seemed slightly off, as if the foreign tissue were affecting the way her facial muscles moved. She thought of Reed's appearance, that ethereal, not quite human quality, and wondered if that was her future. Not just altered skin, but a transformation so profound that others would sense her otherness, as that child on the train had done. The car that arrived was an unmarked black SUV with tinted windows. The driver, a man with the same perfect skin and unusual eyes as Reed, said nothing as they entered the vehicle, merely nodding in acknowledgement of Marcus's statement that they would both be going to the facility. As they drove out of the city, Emma felt the movement beneath her skin intensifying. Twice during the journey, her hand clenched into a fist without her conscious intent, confirming Reed's warning about involuntary muscle contractions. The second time, the spasm extended up her arm to her shoulder, a wave of unwanted movement that left her gasping in fear and discomfort. Marcus watched her with growing concern, his hand never far from the case containing the biocide syringe. "How are you feeling?" he asked quietly. "Like I'm losing control of my own body," Emma whispered back. "It's happening more frequently now." The facility, when they finally arrived, was not what Emma had expected. Rather than a sterile, modern laboratory complex, they pulled up to what appeared to be a converted farm property. Several buildings were arranged around a central courtyard, their exteriors maintaining the rustic appearance of the original structures while their interiors, visible through large windows, had been transformed into sleek, high-tech spaces. Dr. Reed was waiting for them at the entrance to the largest building. In the natural light, the otherworldly quality of her appearance was even more pronounced. Her skin seemed to glow from within, and the strange depth of her eyes was impossible to ignore. "Ms. Chen, Dr. Wei," she greeted them. "Thank you for coming promptly. Let's proceed to the assessment area immediately." She led them through a reception area that looked more like a luxury spa than a medical facility, with minimalist furnishings and soothing lighting. Beyond this was a more clinical space, with examination rooms and what appeared to be laboratory areas, visible through glass partitions. Emma noticed that all the staff they passed had the same perfect skin and unusual eyes as Reed. Some had progressed even further in whatever transformation the Dermintegra complex induced. Their movements fluid, yet somehow inhuman, their features displaying a symmetry and perfection that transcended normal attractiveness to become almost uncanny. Reed brought them to an examination room equipped with advanced medical technology, some of which Emma didn't recognize despite her scientific background. "I'll need to conduct a full assessment before we determine the best course of action," Reed explained, gesturing for Emma to sit on the examination table. "The acceleration you're experiencing may require a modified approach, whether for continuation or reversal." Emma hesitated, glancing at Marcus, who nodded reassuringly. "I'll be right here the whole time," he promised, setting his case on a nearby counter where he could easily access it if needed. Reed conducted a thorough examination, using instruments that scanned beneath Emma's skin to map the progression of the integration. Her expression grew increasingly grave as she studied the results displayed on a holographic projection above the examination table. "The acceleration is significant," she finally said, The dermintegra complex has already reached muscle tissue in several areas and is approaching the peripheral nervous system. At this rate, it will reach your central nervous system within 48 hours. And what happens then? Emma asked, though she dreaded the answer. Reed's strange eyes met hers directly. In controlled integration, neural connectivity occurs gradually, allowing for proper synchronization. In accelerated cases like yours, the rapid colonization of neural tissue can result in competing control signals. Essentially, your nervous system and the dermintegra network both attempting to control the same functions. Like the involuntary movements I'm experiencing, Emma realized. Exactly. Those are early indications of neural integration beginning. As it progresses, the episodes would increase in frequency and extent. Marcus stepped closer to the projection, studying it with professional interest despite the circumstances. Is reversal still possible at this stage? Reed hesitated, then nodded. Yes, but it's become more complex. The standard enzyme treatment would be insufficient given how far the integration has progressed. We would need to use a more aggressive approach that carries greater risk of tissue damage. She turned to Emma, her expression solemn. Before you decide, there's something else you should know. The accelerated integration you're experiencing isn't random. It appears to be a specific response pattern related to your genetic profile. My genetics? Emma frowned. How would you know my genetic profile? The dermintegra complex contains bioassay components that analyze host cellular structure upon initial contact, Reed explained. This information is used to optimize the integration process for each individual. She paused, seeming to choose her next words carefully. In rare cases, less than 0.1% of the population, a specific genetic marker triggers an enhanced response. Your cells aren't just accepting the integration, they're actively facilitating it, incorporating the foreign tissue more efficiently than typical human cells. Is that dangerous? Marcus asked. Not inherently, Reed replied. In fact, it potentially offers superior results. More complete integration, enhanced tissue performance, possibly even evolutionary improvements we haven't observed in standard cases. She focused on Emma again, her strange eyes intense. You could be the next stage in our work, Ms. Chen. Your genetic profile makes you uniquely suited to what we're trying to achieve. Emma felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. And if I still want reversal? Reed's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in those inhuman eyes. As I said, it's possible but riskier than in standard cases. The treatment would need to be calibrated specifically for your enhanced integration pattern. She moved to a cabinet and withdrew a sealed container. I've prepared the enzymatic complex based on your initial assessment. If reversal is truly what you want, we should begin immediately, before the neural integration progresses further. Emma looked at the container, then at Reed, then finally at Marcus. The decision before her seemed impossible. Trust this woman and her unknown enzyme treatment, or allow this alien presence to continue its spread through her body, eventually reaching her brain and potentially altering her very consciousness. I want the reversal, she said finally, whatever the risks. Reed nodded, her expression unreadable. Very well. The procedure will take approximately 4 hours. You'll need to remain under observation for at least 24 hours afterward to ensure the process is complete and to manage any adverse reactions. She turned to Marcus. Dr. Wei, you're welcome to observe, but I must ask that you don't interfere with the procedure once it begins. Interruption could cause severe damage to Ms. Chen's tissue. Marcus nodded grimly, his hand still resting protectively near his case. I understand. As Reed prepared the treatment, Emma lay back on the examination table, fighting against another wave of involuntary muscle contractions that rippled across her abdomen and down her legs. The movement beneath her skin had become constant now, a ceaseless undulation that made her feel as if her body were being colonized from within, which, she supposed, was exactly what was happening. Reed approached with a syringe containing a pearlescent liquid similar in appearance to the serum Emma had applied to her skin, but with a faint reddish tinge. This first injection establishes a chemical gradient that will draw the integrated tissue towards specific collection points, she explained. Once concentrated, the secondary enzyme treatment will break down the connections and allow for extraction. She positioned the syringe at the crook of Emma's elbow. You'll feel intense heat as the process begins. This is normal and indicates the treatment is working. As the needle pierced Emma's skin, she noticed something strange, a sudden cessation of movement beneath the surface, as if the foreign tissue were recoiling from the injection site. The stillness spread outward from her arm, creating an eerie calm after days of constant movement. Reed's eyes narrowed slightly as she observed this reaction. Interesting. Your integration pattern shows unusually coordinated response. The derm integra complex appears to be communicating across your body more effectively than we typically see. She administered the full dose, then stepped back to monitor Emma's reaction. The promised heat bloomed at the injection site, quickly intensifying to a burning sensation that radiated through Emma's arm. She gasped, clenching her teeth against the pain. Try to remain still, Reed instructed. The initial phase will be uncomfortable, but should stabilize within 15 minutes. Marcus moved closer to the table, his expression concerned. Her skin is changing color at the injection site. Emma raised her head enough to see her arm. The area around the injection had taken on a grayish tinge, the veins beneath visibly darkening as if filled with ink rather than blood. The sight sent a fresh wave of panic through her. It's part of the collection process, Reed assured them, though her own expression had grown more intent. The pigmentation indicates the derm integra fibers are being drawn toward the chemical gradient. As the minutes passed, the gray coloration spread further up Emma's arm, accompanied by a sensation like thousands of tiny needles moving beneath her skin. The pain was becoming difficult to bear, and she found herself gasping for breath between waves of intense burning. Something's wrong, Marcus said sharply, watching Emma's face contort in pain. This seems excessive for a controlled procedure. Reed checked the monitoring equipment, her brow furrowing. The reaction is stronger than anticipated. Her unique integration pattern may be affecting the treatment process. She prepared another syringe with a clear solution. This will help manage the discomfort and stabilize the reaction. Before she could administer it, Emma felt a violent spasm rip through her body. Her back arched off the table, muscles contracting with such force that she heard something crack in her spine. A scream tore from her throat as the burning sensation intensified exponentially, becoming an all-consuming fire that seemed to melt her from the inside out. Through the haze of agony, she heard Marcus shouting and saw him lunging toward Reed, preventing her from administering the second injection. Stop. Whatever you've given her is making it worse. Reed's calm facade finally cracked, her inhuman eyes flashing with anger. You don't understand what's happening. Her body is fighting the reversal process. I need to stabilize her before. She never finished the sentence. Emma felt something tear inside her, a ripping sensation followed by a flood of warmth across her abdomen. Looking down, she saw with horror that her skin had split open, not bleeding red blood but leaking the same clear opalescent fluid she had seen when Reed cut herself. More terrifying still was what emerged from the tear, a writhing mass of translucent fiber-like structures that pulsed with their own rhythm, seeming to reach outward like searching tentacles. As Emma watched in paralyzed horror, the mass continued to extrude from her body, growing larger and more defined by the second. Marcus had backed away, reaching for his case with the biocide. Reed, however, was approaching Emma with an expression of wonder rather than concern. Extraordinary, she breathed. It's not fighting the reversal. It's accelerating separation on its own terms. The derm integra complex has achieved sufficient neural integration to act with autonomous preservation instinct. Help me! Emma managed to gasp between waves of pain. The mass continued to emerge from her abdomen, now the size of a small melon and still growing. Reed made no move to intervene, instead watching with scientific fascination as the process continued. This is unprecedented. It's extracting itself rather than being dissolved by the enzymes. Self-preservation at a collective cellular level. Marcus had retrieved his syringe gun and was loading it with the biocide. Get away from her, he ordered Reed, raising the weapon. Reed finally turned her attention from the writhing mass to Marcus, her expression hardening. You don't understand what you're witnessing. This is evolutionary history in the making. The derm-integra complex has achieved true symbiotic intelligence, capable of making survival decisions independent of its host. It's killing her, Marcus shouted, gesturing to Emma, whose skin was now splitting in multiple places, similar masses emerging from each tear. No, Reed contradicted calmly. It's saving both of them. The reversal enzyme was incompatible with her enhanced integration pattern. It would have caused cascading tissue death if allowed to continue. The complex is removing itself to preserve both entities. Emma could barely process their exchange through the overwhelming pain. Her consciousness was beginning to fragment, awareness flickering as the masses continued to extract themselves from her body. Each separation brought a momentary relief from pain in that area, followed by a cold emptiness, as if parts of herself were being torn away along with the alien tissue. And perhaps they were. After days of integration, could her own cells be so entangled with the foreign tissue that separation meant losing pieces of herself as well? Through dimming vision, she saw Marcus approach, the syringe gun aimed at the largest mass emerging from her abdomen. Reed moved with inhuman speed to intercept him, her perfect face contorted with rage. You will not destroy it, she hissed, her voice suddenly less human than before. This specimen is too valuable. As they struggled, Emma felt one final massive tear across her torso. The largest mass pulled free entirely, leaving a gaping wound that immediately began to close at the edges, the tissue drawing together with the same accelerated healing she had witnessed in Reed's demonstration. The freed mass pulsed on the floor beside the examination table, growing more defined by the second. Emma watched through a haze of pain and fading consciousness as it formed appendages, the translucent tissue beginning to take on a more solid appearance. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was the creature, for she could no longer think of it as mere tissue, turning what appeared to be a rudimentary sensory organ toward her, as if regarding its former host with newfound independence. In that moment, Emma could have sworn she felt a flicker of alien consciousness brush against her mind, curious, unsentimental, and utterly inhuman in its perception. Then, mercifully, she knew no more. Emma woke to the sound of steady beeping and the antiseptic smell of a hospital room. For several disoriented moments, she couldn't remember how she had gotten there, or why she felt so hollow and weak. Then the memories came crashing back, the skincare products, the integration, Reed's facility, and finally, the horrific extraction of the thing that had been growing inside her. She tried to sit up, but found her body uncooperative, muscles weak and joints stiff as if she had been immobile for a long time. A movement at her bedside caught her attention, and she turned her head to see Marcus slumped in a chair, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept in days. Marcus, she croaked, her voice hoarse from disuse. He startled awake, relief flooding his face when he saw her conscious. Emma, thank God. He reached for a call button beside her bed. The doctors need to know you're awake. How long? She managed to ask. Almost 2 weeks, he replied grimly. You've been in and out of consciousness, mostly delirious when awake. This is the first time you've seemed lucid. 2 weeks. Emma felt a wave of disbelief. What happened? After I blacked out, Marcus hesitated, clearly weighing how much to tell her in her weakened state. Before he could answer, a doctor entered the room, followed by 2 nurses. Ms. Chen, I'm Dr. Patel. The woman introduced herself, checking Emma's vital signs with practiced efficiency. You've given us quite a challenge these past 2 weeks. How are you feeling? Weak, Emma admitted. And empty. Dr. Patel nodded as if this were an expected response. Understandable, given what your body has been through. We're still not entirely clear on the nature of the organism that was removed from your tissues, but the extraction was extensive. Emma glanced at Marcus questioningly. He nodded slightly, confirming that the medical staff knew at least some version of what had happened to her. The CDC has been involved in your case, Dr. Patel continued. Whatever this organism was, It appears to have integrated with multiple tissue types throughout your body. The removal process triggered what we can only describe as a massive autoimmune response, as if your body couldn't distinguish between its own cells and the invading organism anymore. She checked Emma's chart, her expression serious but professional. You've been on immunosuppressants and regenerative therapies to help your tissues recover. The good news is that your most recent blood work shows signs of stabilization. Your body seems to be adapting to the changes. Changes? Emma repeated, a new fear taking hold. What changes? Dr. Patel exchanged a glance with Marcus before responding. Some cellular alterations appear permanent. The organism, whatever it was, left behind certain modifications to your tissue structure, nothing that should affect normal function, but you may notice differences in how quickly you heal, among other things. Emma closed her eyes, absorbing this information. Part of the thing was still with her, incorporated into her, cells in ways that couldn't be reversed. The thought was both disturbing and, strangely, not entirely unwelcome. After the horrific extraction process, she had expected worse. What happened to Reed? She asked, opening her eyes again. And the thing that came out of me? At this, Marcus leaned forward. Dr. Patel, could we have a moment? The doctor nodded. Of course. I'll be back to discuss your treatment plan in more detail, Ms. Chen. Try not to overtax yourself in the meantime. When the medical staff had left, Marcus moved his chair closer to Emma's bed, his voice low and intense. There's a lot I can't tell you, partly because I don't know everything and partly because what I do know is now classified by multiple government agencies. He shook his head, as if still struggling to believe what he had witnessed. Security arrived. Not Dermis Novum staff, but actual federal agents. They had apparently been monitoring the facility for months. In the chaos, Reed and several of her staff escaped. They haven't been found. The government knew? Emma asked incredulously. They knew what Dermis Novum was doing and didn't stop them? It's complicated, Marcus sighed. From what I've gathered during endless debriefings, intelligence agencies became aware of unusual activity at the Marine Biological Institute around the time Reed left. They've been tracking her and others associated with the project since then, trying to understand the full scope of what they were doing before intervening. He lowered his voice further. There's a theory that Reed wasn't the originator of the technology, that she herself was exposed to something during deep-sea research that changed her, and she's been working to refine and spread that change through Dermis Novum. Emma thought of Reed's inhuman eyes and her evangelical commitment to evolutionary advancement. Had she been a willing participant in her own transformation, or a vector for something else? Something that had used her scientific knowledge to propagate itself. How many others used the products? She asked, dreading the answer. Thousands, according to sales records. The authorities are trying to track down everyone who purchased Luminance products, but many are reluctant to come forward, and from what I understand, most users don't experience the accelerated integration you did. Their changes are more gradual, less dramatic, and therefore less noticeable until much later stages. Emma thought of Zoe, who had admired her perfect skin and wanted the product for herself. How many others were unwittingly hosting the same organism, gradually being changed from within? What happens now? She asked. Marcus hesitated. You'll be monitored long-term. The CDC and other agencies want to understand the permanent changes to your cellular structure. But you're not a prisoner. Once you're physically recovered, you'll be released with certain reporting requirements. He reached out and took her hand gently. I've been authorized to tell you that your position at Helios is secure. In fact, they're interested in having you join a new research division focused on understanding and potentially counteracting the Dermintegra technology. Emma wasn't sure how to feel about that. The scientist in her was intrigued by the opportunity to study what had happened to her, to potentially help others affected by the same organism. But another part of her wanted nothing more than to distance herself from the entire experience. I need time to think, she said finally. Marcus nodded understandingly. Of course, there's no rush to decide anything. Over the following days, as Emma's strength gradually returned, she learned more about the changes to her body The parts of the derm integra complex that had remained integrated with her cells even after the primary mass extracted itself had left her with several unusual characteristics: accelerated healing, enhanced cellular regeneration, and skin that, while no longer unnaturally perfect, had a resilience and clarity beyond normal human tissue. Blood tests revealed other changes at the molecular level: altered immune response, modified cellular metabolism, and proteins previously unknown in human biology. She was, the specialists explained carefully, no longer entirely human in the strictest biological sense. This revelation should have horrified her, but instead, Emma found herself viewing it with scientific detachment. The organism had changed her, yes, but the core of who she was, her mind, her memories, her sense of self, remained intact. She had not become what Reed had become, a human shell for something fundamentally alien. A month after waking in the hospital, Emma was finally cleared for discharge. The apartment she returned to felt both familiar and strange, as if she were seeing it through different eyes, which in a sense she was. Her perception had subtly altered during her recovery, colors appearing more vivid, patterns more distinct. The first night home, she stood before her bathroom mirror studying her reflection. Her skin still had a faint luminosity to it, though nothing like the unnatural perfection of the active integration phase. When she pressed her fingers against her cheek, the tissue felt normal, resilient, and living, not the thin memory foam consistency it had developed during integration. But when she looked closely at her eyes, she could see the change that confirmed she would never be entirely the same again. Her irises had that same subtle depth that she had noticed in Reed's eyes, not as pronounced, but unmistakably present. A constant reminder of what had happened to her, visible to anyone who knew what to look for. Emma thought of Reed, still at large somewhere with her transformed staff. Were they continuing their work in secret? How many others had been changed more completely, embracing the transformation that Emma had fought against? 2 days after returning home, Emma received a package. There was no return address, but she knew immediately who it was from. Inside was a small vial of iridescent liquid, not the serum she had used, but something similar, and a handwritten note. "What remains in you is incomplete, arrested at an early stage of development. The potential still exists for full transformation. When you're ready to embrace what you've begun, use this. We'll find you." Evolution doesn't ask permission, Emma. It simply happens, with or without our consent. You've already taken the first steps on a journey that can't be reversed, only completed. E.R. Emma stared at the vial for a long time, watching the liquid shift and swirl as if alive and aware. Part of her, a small, curious part she wasn't entirely comfortable acknowledging, wondered what full transformation would be like. What capabilities might she gain? What experiences might become possible beyond the limitations of conventional human biology? Another part recoiled in horror at the thought of becoming like Reed, so changed that her humanity was merely a facade for something alien. In the end, Emma took the vial to the secure laboratory where she had accepted a position researching the derm integra technology. She handed it over to the containment team without opening it, providing another piece to the puzzle they were all working to solve. But sometimes in her dreams, Emma returned to that moment in Reed's facility when the creature emerging from her body had seemed to regard her with alien awareness. In these dreams, she felt again that brush of inhuman consciousness against her mind, not malevolent but utterly different in its perception and priorities. And sometimes, upon waking, she would feel a faint rippling beneath her skin, a ghost of the movement that had tormented her during integration. Medical scans showed nothing unusual, no foreign organism still living within her tissue, but the sensation persisted occasionally like a phantom limb after amputation, a reminder that something had been part of her and then separated, taking pieces of her with it just as it had left pieces of itself behind. On those mornings, Emma would stand before her mirror, studying the subtle changes to her eyes, wondering about the thing that had emerged from her body. Had it survived somehow, despite Marcus's biocide? Was it out, there, evolving, growing, perhaps even remembering its time within her? And if so, What would happen when it encountered human beings again? Emma had no answers, only the certainty that she had glimpsed something profound and terrifying beneath the surface of ordinary reality, a possibility for transformation that was neither entirely beneficial nor entirely destructive, but something more complex and ambiguous. Like the perfect skin that had briefly been hers, the surface of human existence concealed depths that most preferred not to acknowledge. But once you had seen what lay beneath, there was no returning to comfortable ignorance. There was only the knowledge that beneath every surface, even your own skin, something unexpected might be waiting to emerge.